The wind pushed the dust flat against the plains, whistling low between the broken fences and sun-bleached boards of a house that hadn't stood proud in years. The wagon was gone. It had rolled over the ridge at first light. No note, no farewell, just tracks in the dirt and an open gate swinging slow in the breeze. Eva stood in the doorway, bare feet, pale dress, eyes that didn't move, even when her little brother coughed behind her. Three children clung to each other inside the house. The youngest, Lily, was still sleeping, her fingers tangled in the hem of a shirt too big for her. The boy beside her stared out the window, dirt on his face like ash. Eva didn't speak. She never did unless it mattered. She stepped off the porch. The boards groaned. Her heel caught in a gap, tore the cloth near the ankle. She didn't flinch. Out back, the root cellar still held 2 jars of beans and a tin of flour. She counted. That meant 3 days if she stretched it. By noon, she'd carried in 2 buckets of water from the creek, patched the roof with a broken skillet, and lit the stove with last year's kindling. It sputtered, hissed, caught fire. That night, the 4 of them ate in silence. There was no table anymore, just a trunk with one hinge. They huddled around it, eating with their fingers, taking turns with the spoon. Eva ate last. She didn't notice the cold. She was used to being outside things. Warmth, comfort, names. Their parents had never spoken her full name, just girl or you. And when they left, they didn't bother with that either. Eva, at 17, didn't know what a family was supposed to feel like, only what it felt like to hold 3 smaller bodies together when the roof cracked in the night and no one came back. She tucked them in, sat by the fire, waited for nothing. But something came, a rider. She didn't hear him approach, just the snort of a horse and the slow step of boots on dry dirt. She opened the door a crack. He didn't speak at first, just looked. A man in a weathered coat, the kind made to last, dust in his beard, a rope coiled neat at his hip. His eyes scanned the house, then settled on her face, not with pity, just with stillness. "You alone?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded. He didn't ask where the parents went, didn't ask names, just tipped his hat and said, "Cold's coming. If you need something, I live over the ridge." Then he turned. Eva watched him right away. The next morning there was a sack near the porch. Inside, bread, a blanket, and 3 apples. She didn't tell the others where it came from, just divided it up, tucked the extra under the floorboard. 3 days later, a pile of chopped wood, then a kettle, then a coat that fit the boy just right. She waited one evening, not hiding, just standing near the post. He came as usual, left a small sack, started to turn. "Why?" she asked. His voice was low. "Because you're still here." That was all. He left before she could say more. After that, she stopped asking. Instead, she swept the porch each morning, chopped wood with hands that blistered and bled, caught rainwater in pans, taught the youngest how to tie knots, told the boy not to flinch when the wind hit the door hard. When the man returned, she left something for him, a rag-wrapped coin, the only one she had. He didn't take it. One night, she found a note in the bread sack. "You don't owe me." It was signed with nothing. That winter, the snow came early. The house groaned under the weight. Eva sat beside the fire, holding Lily tight as fever burned through the child's skin. She didn't pray. She just rocked back and forth, whispering names she'd made up for them. Soft ones, safe ones, words their mother never used. When morning came, she found the soup already hot on the porch, a folded note beside it. "You are not alone." She held it a long time, longer than she should have. Her hands shook, but not from the cold. The man never asked for her name, never knocked. But he came. And in a place like Dust River, where the wind knew everyone's secrets, that was the loudest kind of care. Eva looked at her siblings. She whispered to herself, not for the fire, not for the man, just for the silence. "I don't carry their name anymore." No one answered, but the fire didn't go out, and in her chest something small and still began to breathe. The storm came 3 days later. It rolled in from the north, fast and low, with skies the color of iron and wind that screamed through the grass like it was hunting something. Eva had seen storms before, dust storms, windstorms, fire in the distance. But this was different. This one came heavy. She moved quick, pulled water from the creek before it froze, boarded the windows with split planks, stuffed rags in the cracks beneath the door. Inside, the air turned still. The youngest cried once, then slept. The boy stared at the ceiling like he could see through it. By nightfall, the wind clawed the house in waves. The door jumped in its frame. The chimney howled. Eva didn't sit. She stood by the fire with an axe in hand, not because it made sense, but because she didn't know what else to do. Then through the storm came a sound that didn't belong. Not the wind, not the trees, a knock. She thought it was her mind playing tricks, but it came again, slower this time, heavier. She pulled the door back. Cold cut through the room like a knife. The rancher stood there, wet, tall, calm. He didn't wait to be asked. He stepped in, took off his hat and shut the door behind him with one solid push. The house fell quiet for a second. Even the storm outside seemed to wait. Then softly the boy by the stove whispered, "You came back." The man nodded, took off his coat. Knees cracked as he lowered himself beside the fire. He didn't speak more than that, just helped stack the wood, lifted the kettle, set out what he'd brought, salt, lard, a bundle of dried meat. Eva watched him without blinking. This wasn't kindness, not the kind you give and forget. This was something slower, something that stayed. The storm rattled the walls. He reached for Lily, who whimpered in her sleep. She pressed her forehead to his chest without waking. His hand cradled her head like he'd done it before. Eva didn't ask why, didn't ask what he wanted. Instead, she took the old ledger book from the shelf, the one with blank pages, used only once before by a man who never came back. She tore a strip from it, dipped the pen in ink, and for the first time she wrote. Just 5 letters, not her old name, not the one no one spoke. A new one, short, sharp, carved in silence. She turned the paper to him. He read it, looked at her, then nodded once. A slow, certain nod, like he'd known that name before she ever wrote it. Eva folded it, pressed it to her chest. The storm howled again, but inside there was only the soft crack of the fire and the breath of 3 children asleep. And 2 people who weren't strangers anymore. Not quite. By morning, the storm was gone. Snow clung to the grass in thin sheets, brittle and gray. The land steamed in the early light, as if trying to forget the night before. The man left before dawn. He didn't say much, just left the kettle full and added 2 more logs to the fire. Eva stood on the porch and watched him ride off into the white. She didn't wave. He didn't look back. He rode slow, not from caution, from weight. The hills ahead were familiar, marked by dry creek beds and barbed wire that hadn't held cattle in years. His ranch sat in a shallow basin beneath a bare slope. No barn, just a half-standing house, roof sagging in the middle, one shutter missing. The gate hung open, swinging in rhythm with the wind. He dismounted, tied the horse to a post he hadn't fixed in months. The door creaked when he opened it. Inside, the stove was cold. A saddle blanket still lay in the corner, folded like someone might come back for it. The table was set for 2, though the second chair had long since been turned to face the window. He didn't light a fire, just sat, took off his hat, set it down beside the old photograph. A woman in a check dress, holding a baby who looked nothing like the man he was now. He didn't touch the photo, didn't speak, only looked past it, out the broken pane, where wind dragged dead leaves across the porch. There had been a time when this house was full, when her laughter ran through the rooms like wind through cotton, when he believed a fence could keep the world out, when the sound of a child crying didn't make his hands shake. But the fever took them both. Quick, quiet, too quiet. After that, he stopped building. Let the roof sag. Let the horse wander too far before calling it back. He cooked less, slept less, rode farther. And when he saw the girl standing in that doorway, barefoot and wordless, with her siblings behind her like shadows, he didn't see strangers. He saw a second chance he didn't ask for. He stood now, walked to the hearth, placed one log, then another, struck a match. The fire caught slow. He didn't warm his hands, just watched it burn. Then turned and began gathering things. Not many, but enough. The snow didn't last. By the 4th day, it had melted into the earth, leaving behind patches of mud that clung to boots and slowed wagons. The creek swelled. The wind turned dry again. He returned just past noon. No one saw him coming. No dust trail, no sound. Just the sudden shape of a rider on the ridge, silhouetted against the hard sky. Eva stood in the doorway when he reached the gate. This time she stepped out before he dismounted. She carried something in her arms, awkwardly like it wasn't hers. A coat, not new, not stitched well, but whole, washed, sleeves folded. She held it out without speaking. He took it. Their hands brushed, a brief dry contact. Her fingers trembled once and stopped. He nodded. That was all. Inside, the house was quieter than usual. The boy sat near the stove, drawing lines in the ashes with a stick. Lily slept in a bundle of quilts. The middle girl, Sarah, watched from the loft, half hidden behind a beam. The man removed his gloves, set a tin of honey on the trunk, then a pouch of tobacco, then a canister of oats. Eva didn't look at the food. She watched him. There was something in the way he moved today. Slower, not tired, careful. She poured water for tea, used the chipped cup, the one she always saved. When she handed it to him, her fingers didn't shake. He took it. Saturday steam rose in the cold light, curling between them like a thread. Outside, a hawk circled once over the ridge and vanished. He didn't ask about the children. She didn't ask why he came back. But when he stood to go, she followed him to the porch. She reached behind the door, held out a slip of paper. It was the same one, the name she had written during the storm. He unfolded it again, the same 5 letters. She pointed to the children inside, then pointed to herself, then placed her palm flat over her chest. He looked at her a long moment. Then, without words, he folded the paper again and placed it inside his coat. A new name, quietly claimed, not just for her, for all of them. When he rode away, the porch boards creaked under her feet, but she didn't step back. She watched him until he disappeared, then turned to the house behind her. Not just a shelter now, a place becoming something else. The sun was low when the riders appeared on the dusty road. 2 men, worn and hard-eyed, their horses kicking up dust as they approached the ranch. No greetings, no kindness. They carried ropes and a ledger, business in their eyes. Eva stood near the barn, the children close behind her. The men's gaze swept the yard like hawks searching for prey. "We're here for the children," the taller one said, voice cold as winter. "City's got use for them," the other added, "and a price to pay." Eva's heart tightened. The children looked up at her, wide-eyed and silent. She stepped forward. "These children are mine. I won't let you take them." The men exchanged a glance, a quiet warning. One reached for a rope. Eva's hand found the rifle by the porch. She didn't raise it yet, just held it steady. The sun dipped lower. The air thickened with tension. The children huddled close. No words, only the unspoken promise to protect what was hers. The sky bruised purple as night crept over the ridge. Eva kept her rifle steady, eyes fixed on the men. Their shadows lengthened like dark knives across the dry earth. The taller man's hand hovered over his belt, close to a pistol. "You don't know who you're dealing with, woman," he said low. Eva didn't flinch. She took a slow step forward, voice steady. "Try me." The smaller man shifted nervously. Behind them, a cloud of dust stirred. From the tree line, a rider emerged. Tall, silent, eyes cold as steel. A man who knew these lands like the back of his hand. He stopped beside Eva without a word. The men tensed, but the rider's gaze held theirs like a trap. "Leave now," the rider said, voice calm but firm. The men hesitated. A moment stretched thin and sharp. Then the taller one spat. "We'll be back." They turned their horses. Dust swallowed their retreat. Eva's hand finally relaxed on the rifle. The rider looked at the children, then at Eva. No words, but in his silence, a promise. She was not alone. Dawn spilled soft light across the ranch. Eva woke to the distant sound of horses stirring, a new day beginning without promise, but with quiet determination. The siblings moved slowly, still fragile but safer here than anywhere else. The rancher prepared for the morning chores with practiced ease. Eva watched him from the edge of the porch, a man shaped by hardship, his eyes steady but not unkind. No grand speeches, no false hopes, just a steady presence. She felt the weight of the last name on her skin, a symbol of something real but fragile. Could this be her chance to build a future? Or was it just another mask over an unforgiving world? The wind shifted, carrying the scent of wild grass and distant rain. For the first time, Ava dared to breathe without fear. The days passed slow, like the river carving through stone. Ava learned the rhythm of the ranch, the creak of the gate, the lowing of cattle, the sharp snap of reins in the wind. Each task grounded her, stitching new strength into tired bones. Her siblings grew quieter too, finding comfort in the small moments. A shared meal, a lullaby hummed under breath, a gentle hand on a restless shoulder. The rancher watched from a distance, never intrusive but always near, like the steady pulse of the earth beneath their feet. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in fire, Ava stood by the fence. The wind tugged at her hair, whispering secrets of the land she never knew she could call home. The last name she carried felt heavier now, not just a label, but a promise she wasn't ready to break. Somewhere deep inside, the girl left behind was fading, replaced by someone who dared to hope. The wind shifted, carrying distant thunder and the scent of rain. Ava rose before dawn, the cold air biting her cheeks as she stepped out into the vast open fields. Today was different. Her heart pulsed with a quiet urgency she couldn't name. She moved through the ranch like a shadow, unnoticed but watching. The rancher was already at work, tending to a sick colt. Ava approached slowly, her hands trembling as she offered help. He glanced up, eyes sharp but not unkind. Together they worked in silence, an unspoken understanding forming between them. The sky darkened, clouds rolling over the horizon. As the first drops fell, Ava felt a strange peace. Here, amidst the storms and open land, she was beginning to find herself, not the lost girl she'd been, but someone new, shaped by hope and hard work. Days melted into weeks. Eva's hands grew calloused, her back stronger from the endless labor. Yet every evening, she found herself drawn to the old wooden porch where the rancher sat, staring at the fading horizon. Their silence became a language. No promises spoken, no grand gestures made, just quiet companionship. Ava watched the lines of hardship etched on his face and understood that both carried scars deeper than words. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Ava found a faded photograph tucked inside a weathered book in the cabin. A younger version of the rancher smiled with a woman and a child, faces she didn't recognize. A story unspoken, hidden in shadows. The past whispered through the creaking wood, but Ava's gaze remained fixed on the future. Here, in this quiet place, she was no longer just a name given. She was becoming someone worth remembering. The morning air was crisp, tinged with the scent of pine and earth. Eva rose before dawn, her breath misting as she stepped outside. The rancher was already up, tending to the horses with steady hands, moving with the ease of a man bound to the land. Eva joined him without words, feeling the rhythm of the chores, the familiar weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. They worked side by side, a silent pact forged in sweat and quiet understanding. But beneath the calm, tension simmered. Whispers from the nearby town spoke of a new threat. Landowners looking to seize the ranch, hungry for more. The rancher's eyes darkened when the news reached him. This land was not just earth and timber. It was the last thread of hope. That night, Eva found herself clutching the worn photograph again, wondering about the stories the rancher kept hidden, and whether they would be enough to protect the life she was beginning to call her own. The cabin's door creaked open against the wind. The rancher stepped forward, his silhouette a solid barrier between the strangers and Eva. The men exchanged cold looks, weapons barely concealed beneath their coats. Eva's fingers clenched the edge of the wooden table. The siblings huddled silently in the corner, eyes wide but quiet, trusting the man who had given them a name and a home. Words were spoken, sharp, tense. The rancher's voice was low but unwavering. The strangers hesitated, weighing their odds against his resolve. Outside, the storm raged, thunder shaking the earth. Inside, a silent promise was made. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The first light of dawn spilled through the cracked window, casting long shadows across the rough wooden floor. Eva rose slowly, her gaze lingering on the sleeping forms of her siblings. Each breath they took was a fragile thread holding their fragile new life together. Outside, the rancher was already tending the horses, his movements steady despite the tension that is still lingered in the air. He glanced toward the cabin, a silent vow in his eyes, protection at any cost. Eva stepped outside, the cold morning air biting at her cheeks. The land stretched endlessly before them, harsh, unforgiving, but theirs, a promise of hope woven into every sunrise. Months had passed. The once broken cabin now stood firm, surrounded by fields tended with care. Eva, taller now, her eyes steady and determined, watched her siblings play beneath the wide, open sky. The scars of their past remained, quiet marks beneath the surface. But a new story was being written. The rancher approached silently, handing her a worn leather-bound book. Inside, the pages held the history of their land, their family, now intertwined with his. He nodded, a wordless promise of belonging. Ava closed her eyes briefly, feeling the weight of a name finally earned, a home finally claimed. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the faint echoes of the past and the steady heartbeat of a new beginning.